Hello, my beautiful friends and loyal listeners. It's always a pleasure to spend my time with you on the airwaves. Thank you for listening and interacting with me on social media. That truly makes it all worthwhile. Please make sure to follow me at Zen Sams. That's Zen with an X. You could find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We have a great show lined up for you today. As usual, a mix of celebrities, impressive citizens, and tons of fun. Today, we are with our VIP lineup. Actor Kevin Sorbo, Hercules himself, is in the house. Did you know that Hercules ran for 7 years and became the most watched show in the world? Now, Kevin has made his feelings about President Joe Biden quite clear, condemning his policies and what he claims is a constant, unbelievable amount of hypocrisy within the Biden administration. And Kevin has long been one of the few actors in Hollywood who was brave enough to be open about his conservative and Christian views. Also joining us a tad later, our very own president of wealth management at Revere Securities, Kyle Wool, who appears regularly on this show, is joined by good friend Frazer Rice, who is regional director of Pendleton Square Trust Company. And we're going to be chatting about generational wealth, how to stay rich and keep it multiplying. And finally, Daphne Barak and Bill Gunasti are back. They seem to be regulars. Daphne is now releasing NFTs from her Amy Winehouse archives. She's partnered with DP Holdings and Original 2 Digital Corporation to bring this content to the digital world. She's claiming ownership over Amy Winehouse, Michael Jackson, and Whitney Houston's last moments, allowing for their legacy to proudly live on. Now, before we bring on actor Kevin Sorbo, I wanted to share some startling facts that I stumbled upon preparing this very episode. Now, the number of Americans living with cancer will increase by nearly a third to almost 18 million by the year 2022, according to a report released last Thursday by the American Cancer Society and the National Cancer Institute. Now, researchers found that even though the incidence rates of cancer are decreasing, the number of cancer survivors is on the rise due to a growing and aging U.S. population. Because, of course, the incidence of cancer rises dramatically with age. That's logical. Now, merely 1/2 of American cancer survivors are age 70 or older, while only 5% are 40 or younger. The median age of patients at the time of diagnosis is 66 years old. Now, the 3 most common cancers among men with the disease are prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, and melanoma. Now, the most common cancers among women living with cancer were breast cancer, uterine, and colorectal cancers. Now, there are also 58,000 survivors of childhood cancer living in the United States, and 12,000 or more children will be diagnosed in the year 2022. So what does that tell you? Well, it's simple. Don't smoke. Don't use any tobacco products, especially while pregnant. Minimize alcohol intake. Keep your weight in a normal range, a BMI under 25. Focus on nutritious foods like vegetables and fruits and whole grains. Minimize intake of sugary drinks and calorie-dense food. Of course, limit the consumption of red meats. This includes beef, pork, and lamb. Also avoid processed meats. I only eat organic for this very reason. Be physically active and aim for at least 30 minutes a day of moderate intensity exercise. Limit your sun exposure, cover up, and use sunscreen. And for my women out there, avoid menopausal hormone replacement therapy. If you have kids, breastfeed your babies for at least 6 months. And of course, know your family history. Well, that's it for that, but stay tuned. We'll be right back with actor Kevin Sorbo. I am your host, Zen Sams. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Tempest, a Burkhan World project, Vichecina in Midtown and Soho, Revere Securities, Helen Yarmack International, and Romulus Entertainment. Tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, or download the iHeart app. Text the word collaborations to 917-575-2321. Follow Zen on social media at ZenSams. That's Zen with an X.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, welcoming to the show, we have actor Kevin Sorbo. Hercules himself is in the house. Now, back in 1993, Kevin emerged as a full-fledged international TV star when he was cast as the lead role of Hercules in a series of TV films that would lay the groundwork for the immensely popular series Hercules, The Legendary Journeys. Now, Kevin also guest starred as Hercules in episodes of the successful spin-off series Xena Warrior Princess, and even provided his voice to the animated Hercules films. We're all about Herc, I say. Hercules ran 7 years and became the most watched show in the world. Currently, Kevin has a movie at the box office titled The Girl Who Believes in Miracles, another film he's starring in called One Nation Under God. And this fall, he has a film coming out titled Miracle in East Texas, set in 1930, starring Lou Gossett, which apparently might be a true story. We're going to ask him about that. Now, recently, Kevin states that being a Christian and a conservative in Hollywood is like being a double leper. Kevin has made his feelings about President Joe Biden very clear, condemning his policies and what he claims is constant, unbelievable amounts of hypocrisy within the Biden administration, criticizing conservative governors for their COVID-19 policies while also trying to open our borders to illegal aliens. So I take it he's not a fan. Now, Kevin has long been one of the few actors in Hollywood who is brave enough to be open about his conservative views. Now, regarding socialism, he is not wrong. A series of recent polls indicate public perception of capitalism has taken a major hit, coinciding with the rise of so-called democratic socialist politicians such as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her band of leftists. Now, a Fox News poll taken earlier this month found 59% of Democrats had a positive view of socialism, which is up 19% from last year. The same poll found just 8% of Republican respondents had a positive view of socialism. Now let's bring him in and get his opinion. Welcome to the show, superstar. Kevin, it's so nice to have you on.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I think they gave you a misprint on that. I said that a Christian and conservative in Hollywood is a double leper. I threw in the biblical term of being a leper.
So. There you go. Well, you are so right. Tell us about...
Yeah, look, I got ostracized. I mean, my manager and agent said we can't work with you anymore just because of that. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting because the left, the liberals are all screaming for us to have tolerance, yet they have no tolerance whatsoever. It's a one-way street with those guys. So it's unfortunate. I don't harbor that kind of hate and anger and destructive attitude that they do on the left. It's amazing to me. They say they're the party of forgiveness and love. They're the opposite of that. They love violence. They love hate. They love anger, and this is what they do. And you look at the streets right now, the way it's playing out, it's exactly the way they love it.
I agree. Listen, I mean, we have a divided America, Gen Zers who are just maybe perhaps a bit too much entitled, who don't want to put in the work, and a whole bunch of fear mongering. What's going on here is extremely disheartening, especially since many of my peers are self-made. They set the bar high for themselves, and many have paid their fair share of taxes, and Hollywood as well. But since Hollywood appeals to a lot of entitled individuals, they need to cater to their demographic. And the story follows the same pattern, with this socialist left behavior. Tell me, in your opinion, what do you think? Do you think it's more of like a trend, or do you think that we have truly gotten to a point in time in our democracy where it's a losing battle? I mean, for Republicans, what do you think is going on?
I hope it's not a losing battle. I really think it started 50 years or over 50 years ago. If you look at the 60s, that's when things really changed in Hollywood. Andrew Breitbart had it right. Politics runs downstream from culture, and who runs the culture? Well, Hollywood does, and the mainstream media does. So we've had 50 years of movies that have just gotten darker, more violent, more angry, we made the anti-hero, the villains, the guys, the heroes now, the people to look up to, which is just bizarre to me. And Walt Disney said way back in the 1950s that movies and television will influence our youth. Well, look what's being played out in our streets right now, and you see it. For them to think socialism is a good thing is insanity. And why the press believes that, or why they're pushing an agenda, is weird to me. But I guess we've gotten to the point now where people can just not work and be taken care of. But that's only going to get worse. We already see inflation kicking in right now. And it's only going to get worse because eventually, as Maggie Thatcher said, the problem with socialism, eventually you run out of other people's money. and the other people's money are people that actually work for a living and pay taxes and still want to pursue that American dream. But I think the fear is an amazing weapon, and you've been using it for the last year and a half with the COVID and with the economy, and it just is a drum that keeps playing over and over again. And pretty soon, people start believing 2 + 2 = 5. And it's crazy, and it's insanity that we're doing right now. And our public education system is one of the main culprits to blame. And Lenin even said back during the Bolshevik Revolution, the best way to control a population is through education. And boy, are they doing it right now.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? Look, we have conservatives believe in equal opportunity. Liberals believe in equal outcome. And the conservatives' view of government's role in society is to set up the game pieces such that those choosing to participate have a reasonably equal chance of winning, a reasonable shot at success, that individual initiative, hard work, and a bit of luck can eliminate all of the barriers to educational, professional, and financial achievement. In contrast, liberals stipulates an equal outcome for all people. Their view of government is that its responsibilities to ensure that every individual has at least a minimally acceptable share of society's spoils. And there's an old cliche, Kevin, that speaks perfect to the dangers of when one does not feel the responsibility of ownership. And my grandmother always used to say, no one ever washes a rented car, period, in the end.
Very, very true. And
you
look at Europe as a whole. Europe as a whole is a country of renters. America are people that want to have their own condo, their own apartment. I mean, not apartment. They want to own a home. They want to own a duplex. They want to own something. And now we're turning into the opposite with that. And it's strange. I look at these people that believe in socialism. These are people that have already given up on their lives. They maybe tried a little bit and they failed once, and one failure was enough for them just to give up and blame you, blame me, blame God they don't believe in, blame the universe, and say, you owe me. I don't owe anybody anything. I didn't grow up in that. My dad was a public school teacher. I'm the fourth of 5 kids. My dad taught us hard work. All of us, all 5 of his kids were taught about being independent and don't expect handouts. And that was coming from a Democrat household. But the Democrats today aren't the Democrats of the 1950s and 60s. If you want to look at the 1960 inauguration speech of John F. Kennedy, that's not a Democrat talking today. I mean, it's even on his grave. One of the most famous lines was, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And yet we've got all these people out there now saying, just give me a handout. I want cradle to grave responsibility taken over by the government, the big government. And that's not the way this country was set up. And now we're one by piece destroying it. We are at a tipping point, and people need to wake up. There are a lot of voices out there in Hollywood that believe the way I do, but they're too afraid to speak up. It cost me my career in Hollywood, but it still didn't cost me my career. I started my own production company. I've been doing a lot of independent films. I mean, since my Hercules and Andromeda years, I've shot over 60 movies. Granted, not all of them are great, but the majority of them are good movies with a good message about hope and love and faith and redemption, things that we need in this country now more than ever. And that's the movies that I want to keep doing, the movies that spend a positive thing, not a negative one.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. And, your work speaks for itself. Your career spans over, 2-3 decades. And I think that you're one of those actors that stood the test of time and actually got better with age, without a doubt. I've watched you myself. And I think that you're also, your conservative views, being a Republican in Hollywood, also, like you said, have cost you certain roles, have cost you, without a doubt. But let's talk about this situation that happened in Starbucks not long ago, where it seemed like, again, the media wanted to make, something out of nothing. What happened? You walked in, you didn't have your mask on?
Okay, I got to tell you, Facebook took me down. On Facebook, I was posting things about voter fraud. I was posting things about COVID and mask wearing, and they just took me right down. And what I was posting were, look what all these high-ranking officials are saying about this subject. What do you think? I wasn't saying this is my truth. I hate this my truth stuff. The left always says science, and then they walk away. They love their labels. But look, on Twitter, where you saw that, those are all jokes. I don't drink coffee. I didn't go into Starbucks at all. I was just making a joke. And I got attacked left and right because you know why? The liberals, the far left socialists, have no sense of humor. All they have is anger and hate. I post very funny comments on Twitter, usually just 1, 2, 3 sentences long. And that was complete joke, but people took it seriously because I made fun of a mask wearing again. You can't make fun of that. I mean, give me a break. I mean, comedian guys don't even want to go to universities anymore because they can't even. I saw a thing on Kevin Hart and I saw a thing on Jerry Seinfeld, and they said We're done with that. Ray Romano, same thing. These
Oh
guys
yeah,
don't
it's
deal with these idiots.
being politically correct, this whole PC thing and
Oh,
this whole FOMO, fear of missing out with like whatever celebrities are endorsing, people follow those trends. And at this point right now, where we are at, you're best served to have a mind for yourself, make your own judgments, draw your own conclusions. Do you focus on your own, person and what is happening? And not all Democrats are like this. I have tons of friends in Hollywood that are all Democrats. They're perfectly fine. My husband's a film producer. I think it's the perception of the extreme, meaning anything extreme turns me off, right? Extreme religion, extreme politics, extreme hatred, any extreme, when there's no balance, that's where you lose me. And as a mom, I always like to advocate for peace, love, prosperity, all that good stuff. It sounds very cliche, but it's actually not. When you have a 5.5-year-old child mimicking your every behavior, and you have children, you know what it's like. They pick up everything. So you have to be the best example of yourself. And I think standing the test of time and the way things have unfolded for you, it's not easy in the climate being an actor and especially being a Republican, but I'm hoping that we at some point find this common ground and all kind of coexist peacefully, and no one should be judging on religion or on politics. That's my perspective.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And this is the battle we have right now. And people need to speak up. Look, they're on their way to cancel all of us anyway. So don't wait to try to say something when you can't get a voice out there, when we still have a chance to get a voice out there. Stand up. This is just insane to me. I mean, I will say the problem with all these people are, instead of blaming you and me and everybody else for the problems, they got to, cue the Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror, right? Look in the mirror. That's what the problem is. To decide to make a change in your own bloody life and quit blaming everybody else. I love these trolls that follow me. They think they affect my lifestyle. It just cracks me up. These people have so much hate and they want to attack me. And yet all it does is make them more, go deeper and deeper into this black hole that they live in. And these are just sad, angry people. I would love to do a documentary on these people like Antifa and BLM and all these kind of guys. Okay, like what does BLM stand for? I printed out their manifesto. They took it down now because I think they realized they went too far with it. But they believe in Marxism, socialism, the destruction of God, the destruction of the family unit, all these things. And I'm going, there are other countries that might welcome you that already have that sort of belief set in place. So why don't they just go there and enjoy a country that already is perfectly doing what they believe in and want? I keep telling people, my liberal friends, nobody's taking boats from Key West to Cuba. Nobody is, okay?
Exactly.
They're rush down to the Mexican border to get into Mexico. Sorry, Mexico, I love your resorts, but let's face it, the rest of the country's a mess. If it wasn't a mess, then they wouldn't be flocking to our border. But right now, Biden has let in more people in the first 6 months of his presidency than Trump did his whole 4 years. Shipping them to Texas and to Florida and other red states to turn them into blue states. I mean, this is a plan in place.
Well, without a doubt, look what just happened in Afghanistan. This was a disgrace. This was completely
it's pathetic. 20 years
not necessary. Yes,
because our governments, the last war that we let the armed forces fight was the Korean War. Ever since Vietnam, the government gets involved and they decide. My brother fought 23 years. He was lieutenant colonel in the Army. If they're getting shot at, they have to call into some Washington bureaucrat and say, hey.
Listen, Kevin, I don't want to have to cut you off. We only have about 35 seconds left in the segment. We're going to definitely have you back on because you and I could talk about this all day, every day. Hey. Very quickly, tell us the next film you have coming out so people could check it out. What is it?
Miracle in East Texas. Please go see it. Miracle in East Texas. True story. Lou Gossett Jr. and John Ratzenberger coming up mid-November. I'm directing the next Left Behind movie. And go to sorbos.org. That's sorbo, add an S, make a plural.org.
Look at you, superstar. Well, that was Kevin Sorbo. You heard it directly from Hercules himself. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
If you've missed out dining in New York City for the past year, it's time to visit the legendary Vichecina. Located in the heart of Midtown, Viche specializes in blending delicious Northern Italian and American cuisine with dishes such as the incredible taglione lobster, ravioli masala, ossobuco, and pappardelle al telefono, along with many other mouthwatering offerings. You deserve a great night out. Call Vichecina 212-757-2600 or online at vichecucina.com.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I am your host, Zen Sams. Now, welcoming to the show, we have Daphne Barak and Bill Gunasti. Daphne and Bill were on just a few weeks ago promoting their new book, Struggling for One America, Trump versus Hollywood. To remind you, Daphne is an Israeli-American documentary filmmaker, a celebrity interviewer, and confidant to the stars, and of course, book author. Bill is her lifelong partner and co-author. He's also a film and television producer, a geopolitical subject matter expert specializing in socioeconomic military strategies. That's a tongue twister alone. He's an all-around brilliant guy. Now, Daphne Barak is turning non-fungible tokens, NFTs, a digital asset that asserts ownership of a unique virtual item. And now she's turning digital files like a video or photo and making them unique. Think of it as a certificate of authenticity for digital files. Now, because digital files can be copied, they aren't really that special. But when you make the file into an NFT using blockchain verification, it becomes very unique and quite exclusive. Ownership can now be proven, and people are loving them. So in a world where so much content is available for free, NFTs add a layer that gives this content value. Now, Daphne, the author of Saving Amy, spent 6 months with the iconic pop star's family and is now releasing NFTs from her Winehouse archives. She partnered with DEP Holdings, an Original 2 Digital Corporation, to bring this content to the digital world. She is claiming ownership over Amy's last moments, and why not? She was her confidant of sorts. The Saving Amy Legacy NFT series is a limited time drop that will allow fans to see never before published content about Amy Winehouse from Daphne's archives. Fans will be able to collect rare NFTs of Amy each week for 6 weeks, as well as look back on her illustrious career. Now, the website you can check out is OG2D.com. Now, welcome to the show, my favorite couple.
Thank you very much. How are you, Aden? You look lovely as a flower.
Thank you so much for coming back on. It's always a pleasure talking to you guys. You guys are like the power couple and Hollywood's best kept secret of sorts. For the listeners who don't know about you, they do now. Now, after these, the series concludes, the Saving Amy NFT marketplace is only going to be available for collectors to buy, sell, and trade. And can you tell us a little bit more about what inspired all of these NFTs, Daphne, because it's not just Amy, it's a laundry list of celebrities that you're releasing these special moments.
Yeah, Bill and I partner then with an owner of a bank, and we started a new company which will have exclusively an access for 1 million minutes of my library, which consists 350 huge interviews, but each one is hours and hours and hours. And they've made all the headlines here and primetime networks here and around the world. Now, Amy, as you said very smartly, then, is 6 out of 18 NFTs, which actually fighting addiction. Amy Winehouse, Michael Jackson, and Whitney Houston, which I've been privileged, and Bill was with me with Amy, but I've been privileged, and actually with the Whitney's family as well. We've been privileged to really have the confidence and film with them and their families, and the mutual thing between all these three superstars. Not only is there amazing talent, how many people you can just say Michael and people would know it's Michael Jackson, or Whitney. You don't have to say Houston. Or Amy, just go and Google Amy Winehouse is coming like that. But also the very sad end that they all three died too soon because of addictions. And the series is not like one NFT. Each 6 NFTs are telling the story of each one, and minutes and encounters that I or Bill and I at some faced with the star or their family, which we did not reveal yet, and they're being revealed first time here. For example, I'm giving you a scoop. What's the common between Britney Spears and Amy Winehouse, right? Then they've never met, but we are revealing for the first time from 6 months filming with Amy and her Father Mitch and Mother Janice and their extended family, that Mitch Winehouse was considering seriously to do a Britney on Amy. That means
The
conservative.
conservatorship. And that's a very hot trending story. I mean, that conservatorship for Britney Spears started back in 2008 following her breakdown in 2007. And it's been the topic for quite some time. It's something that I'm talking about in this week's in the show that will be airing on Saturday. But it's interesting because all of these interviews that you have managed to throughout the years, hold on to, now being displayed in a very timely way. So you have 18 NFTs of three big stars. We have Michael Jackson, Amy Winehouse, and Whitney Houston, and six of each. These you have six each of who get NFTs. Right now, all of these stars died tragically, like you said, from addiction, and the art is based on your famous interviews with the stars, and not just the stars, but their families. So you didn't only interview the stars. You went in and really were looked under the hood. So you have some exclusive, never revealed stories before. Is that correct? That contain strong messages about addiction always, and that's the ongoing theme here.
You nailed it, Dan. As usually, you nail things because Mitch Winehouse actually moved at one point to the Intercontinental in London when Bill and I had suites around the clock. Basically, he lived with us. We are the only one who hosted Jenny's Winehouse, Amy's mother, that he left for the secretary for her birthday because Amy was in St. Lucia. Bill actually sent her far away because she wanted to escape. She managed to avoid what Britney didn't. She just ran far away. And, she was alone. So basically, we became the family. I found myself hosting a birthday for her, and Bill went and had dinner with her another night at home because she was heartbroken because the boyfriend left. So, I mean, you definitely, and Liz Murdoch, my partners then and my close friend, and I were laughing at one point that I moved with Michael Jackson and his parents because Catherine and Joe Jackson were actually separated when I started to film, when we did the famous Michael Jackson special, which preempted 2020 on ABC and then CBS twice. And basically, at that point, they didn't speak. And I said, hey, I started to say, why won't you talk to each other? You share a son that is facing 20 years in jail if he's found guilty as a pedophile. And they started to talk, and then they reminiscence about the good old days. And then they moved together. And the second interview, which preempted primetime CBS on the eve of the trial, you see Joe and Catherine Jackson sitting next to the fireplace. I didn't orchestrate it. At that point, they really lived together. They were really back as a couple. So we definitely lived with these people. And
wow, these are
and tragically, before I forget, Bobby Christina, who died like her mother Whitney in the bathtub. As the boyfriend was in both places, came to see us. Actually, it was the first time she came to Beverly Hills after her mother died. It was the anniversary as a Grammy. She came to see us. She sought help. She wanted to hug us, but it was too late. I mean, Bill told her, we are not going to talk to you if you are engaging with drugs.
And all of these interviews and these moments, these because we have about 5 minutes left, and I also want to get some perspective from Bill. But the funny part is that Daphne, you've had this amazing career where you have, so to speak, interacted with not just celebrities and heads of states and politicians and all these impressive individuals, but you've managed to also gain their trust. They open up to you in a sense that a confidant of sorts, and a lot of them trusted you with a lot of private information. Now, the one common thing is all three have passed, and now you have worked so hard throughout your career and have kind of had a lot fall on your shoulders. And I think it's very commendable that you chose to release this footage only now, after you gave each and every one of them time to breathe and heal, because at the end of the day, this is what you do. This is your livelihood. And although a lot of people would say, well, all of these three individuals have passed away, these NFTs are now a cash cow, so to speak. But yes, and righteously so. And it's all about timing. So now it feels right, and the world should know these beautiful moments that have been shared with you. And now, Bill, I'd love your perspective, because you witnessed Daphne alongside all of these celebrities throughout the last couple of years, as this has been put together, as the collection of these moments have kind of been orchestrated and curated for the bigger picture, which we're talking about today in launching these NFTs, what did it allow you to finally look at the digital process in a way where now you're seeing your lifelong partner and all of her accomplishments, and now she's digitizing them, not just interviewing celebrities and writing books, but Daphne, the first one to jump on this bandwagon of NFTs, and of course only somebody like Daphne could orchestrate this in a matter of a couple of months, so to speak. But what's your take on this, on the digital side of the way that Daphne is really promoting this?
This is legacy for these celebrities. You see, they live their lives, and their talents are out for anyone to cherish them or shred them. But there needs to be legacy for each one of them. They deserve this legacy. Now, at this time, everybody around them, families, friends, and other benefactors, and they all go after these names. Now, there is a legacy for saving Amy, for Amy Winehouse, and that has to be out. These NFTs in 6 spaces, 6 NFTs in a row, it will explain that legacy. What should this legacy be? It's an argument. You can counter this argument, but it is there. It's based on knowledge, based on observation, based on interviews, based on documents, that we can challenge anybody because we have the most documents, most time spent with these celebrities. 6 months with Amy Winehouse, 2 years with Michael Jackson and his family. I'm not going into details, but these are incredible amount of information that's gathered. Now it is being displayed in 6 NFTs each.
Beautiful.
Just amplify the legacy of each one of them and put it out there. Go challenge it. Argue about it. If you have a better argument, come back to us. But you cannot.
Well, what's interesting is that there are more than 1 million minutes of this unique, awe-inspiring, and sometimes controversial content, and people could be the judge of themselves. And we have about 1.5 minutes left, but I want to thank you guys for coming on, and then I also want to direct people to the website and remind them again of where they could find this wonderful marketplace. But Bill, listen, you guys are like the couple I love to just sit down and chit chat with. We're going to do it up big when you come back to New York City or come this way. I know that you are having another major launch party for the book coming up in Dallas very soon. So shout out to the book, Struggling for One America, Trump versus Hollywood. You definitely have to check out Bill Gunasti and Daphne Barak. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
Very nice to be with you.
Absolutely.
So you guys listen, fightingforoneamerica.com, iconsintheirownwords.com, daphnebarak.com, and now again, another website I'm directing you to, og2d.com. OG like George, the number 2, and D like dog.com. That was Daphne Barak and Bill Gunasti. I am Zen Sams. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Tempest, a Burkhan World Project, Vichecina in Midtown and Soho, Revere Securities, Helen Yarmack International, and Romulus Entertainment. Tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, or download the iHeart app. Text the word collaborations to 917-575-2321. Follow Zen on social media at Zen Sams. That's Zen with an X.
Welcome back, beautiful people. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I am your host, Zen Sams. Now, joining me in just a sec is Revere Securities President of Wealth Management, Kyle Wohl. He's extremely knowledgeable with investment banking and managing portfolios. Kyle appears regularly on the show, delivering a weekly business report to our listeners and viewers. And he's joined by his good friend, Frazer Rice, who is Regional Director for Pendleton Square Trust Company. Now, Frazer is a leading private wealth manager with 15 years experience advising millionaire and billionaire families on finances, fiduciary, and estate matters. He is the author and podcast host of Wealth Actually, and the book centers on decision-making for wealthy families. Now, the boys are going to be joining me to chat about generational wealth, and best practices for young families. Now let's chat wealth. Wealth is basically defined as assets or resources which are in excess of present or future expected expenses. Think about that. Or a more simple explanation is that wealth is made up of assets which exceed what will be needed for this generation and could be passed on to the next one. And even though wealthy families may not need their wealth for this generation, proper stewardship is required to make sure those assets will actually last for future generations. And as a mom, one of the main considerations in protecting wealth for my family's future generation is that the assets, they have to be sustainable over several generations, resistant to inflation and resistant to political and economic turmoil, which is almost impossible these days. But it is possible to invest in certain assets that can fortify your wealth against some of these external risks. Now, whether you are the first generation to create generational wealth or whether you are researching how to sustain the wealth you have inherited, Kyle and Frazer are here to give us some guidance. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Zen.
Absolutely. Now, Frazer, I read your book, and you are a master at really laying the law when it comes to making sure your assets endure the test of time, so to speak. Can you walk us through the biggest mistakes that you have encountered in your, in your career with people misplanning their generational wealth?
Sure. I can boil it down really to one huge mistake. And you alluded to it in your introductory comments, which is, there's lots of help and advice around making good investments and tax planning, dealing with geopolitical risk and things like that. But the biggest mistake that most families have in planning for the next generation and how they deal with money regards around communication. The biggest source of wealth destruction, in my experience, has been a lack of communication both between generations and amongst siblings of the same generation. Oftentimes, if you don't have a good situation where the values that created the wealth are transferred along with the value of the wealth, kids end up fighting, there's misunderstanding, and that leads to the worst of all situations, and that's litigation.
And of course, and you're talking about investment education, and it's not a coincidence that, being educated is extremely important in for a family structure, especially a family that wants their wealth to last and multiply for generations. And families like the Rockefellers have been able to build some enormous wealth and sustain it for multiple generations, in large part through the education of family members pertaining to the family's wealth. And then I remember reading that Nelson Rockefeller frequently told how his father gave each of his children an allowance of 25 cents, but if they wanted more money, they had to earn it by working. And he also required that they account for where all their money went. And these types of lessons are what is important to pass down to the next generation. So thank you for making that point. Kyle, when it comes to, you are you manage money, portfolios, this is your wheelhouse. What advice would you give to the average person when it comes to estate planning and doing this the proper way? It's important to start with a roadmap that plans the direction of the future sustainability of the family's wealth. And this roadmap should clearly outline how the wealth should be managed and invested. What's your take on this when people come to you for this?
I think really hiring professionals and having the right team makes the biggest difference when you're talking about wealthy families. Like, for example, at Revere Securities, Revere Wealth Management has Revere Family Office Services. And that's where not only do I get involved, I bring in professionals like Frazer who have 30 years experience working in trust and estate planning. And we bring in proper tax people, proper structuring people, so we can look at the family all encompassing and say, okay, this is what makes the most sense for you. And then we build the portfolio around the needs and the desires of the family. And I think having that proper team in place where you have 5 or 6 specialists is the real key.
Exactly. And for example, if your family has 50 million in assets, you want to seek an estate planning attorney who has a lot of experience with these amounts and the appropriate strategies. And as Frazer has defined in his book, it's time that people start early on. So even as a young mom, my husband and I, he's the CEO of a huge media company, and I like to bank on real estate. Now, for centuries, people have been using real estate to protect and grow their wealth, and this asset class is one of the better time-tested investments for generational wealth. I believe that real estate is a great hedge against inflation. Frazer, what do you say to that? Because I'm all about, let me buy as much as I can now so Alexa can have a whole bunch of buildings or homes that she can account for. Am I on the right path here?
Sure. I mean, I think anytime you're able to accumulate assets and have the power of compounding work for you, that is ultimately a really good secret to building generational wealth. Part of that too, though, I think is, along with the education process, is instilling good spending habits amongst the next generations. I think where people get in trouble sometimes is that when the next generations are used to a really high lifestyle, but haven't developed their own sense of investing, asset allocation, or wealth generation, then you run into a real problem where sometimes the assets don't keep up with the spending that's in place. So I like the idea that you're talking about, where you help get assets to the next generation and get kids involved with investing. But I think it's important to have a good spending rationale and an education around what money can and can't do. And part of that is understanding what leverage can and can't do, so that your kids don't get in trouble later on.
And based on your kids not getting in trouble later on a financial level or misspending, what advice would you give, if you can give your, say, teenage children a piece of advice that are coming into young adulthood with respect to that? What would it be?
So I guess the major thing that I would say when putting together sort of thought processes around what you do for kids is just get them involved with money, so that they understand that if you have a portfolio, it's probably reasonable to assume that it can generate, say, 6 or 7% if it's aggressively invested in liquid stocks. But to assume that things will double or triple in the course of 3 or 4 years, that's where you can get in real trouble. And I think the idea of putting in guardrails or having an allowance in place, I like the tip that I got from a former golf pro who would give $5 to his kids, but then take $2 back to help illustrate the effect of taxes. That's the kind of tactic early on in a kid's education around money that I think you start learning those lessons, that they understand how real life works.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Now, Kyle, this question is for you. I'm also about precious metals. I mean, gold and silver, are at the forefront of my brain, not because I like to gamble in this area, but precious metals have been considered money and a storage of wealth for over 2,000 years. Gold and silver are an integrated part of many cultures around the world as a form of money or storage of wealth, so to speak. And over centuries, gold and silver have been seen as the best forms of money for the reasons that it's divisible, it's durable, it's consistent, convenient. I could keep going on and on. What do you tell people that come to you and say, I want to invest in this area with respect to my generational wealth, and this is one way to safeguard it?
Yeah, I think that's a very pertinent and timely question right now, because when you have the inflation pressures coming that we're talking about, when you're having the money supply continuing to increase and we're worried about inflation, and then you also have the Fed talking about tapering, but not yet tapering, talking about raising interest rates, but that won't even happen until after the Fed ends tapering. So when you look at gold's, for the most part, it's a fixed commodity. So if the dollar does get weaker, theoretically, and most times through history, gold will get stronger, right? The same thing with silver. Now, how do you invest in gold is the real question. Do you actually buy physical gold and put it in your house? You can do that. Do you buy large amounts of physical gold and store them at the Federal Reserve Bank? You can do that, but they're going to charge you 50 basis points to 100 basis points for the storage. Or do you look at a truly liquid ETF like GLD? And that could be a great way for the average investor to go out and buy gold, have the liquidity, and it's fully backed in bullion, unlike most other ETFs.
Oh, yeah. Talking about bullion, I mean, regardless of the current public opinion of gold and silver, many Swiss vaults are lined with gold bullion from wealthy families who value gold as a permanent fix, part of their families. And let's move on to collectibles. Frazer, a collectible is an item that either currently has value, wealthy preservation, what we talk about as a collectible, or will have greater value in the future. Speculation is a collectible item. So these types of collectibles are almost limitless, but paintings, artwork, stamps, vintage wines, coins, rugs, and a lot of these collectibles are bought by wealthy families and are considered valuable. What do you say about preserving that in terms of a family heritage to children? Because I always like to teach Alexa that this is not just generational wealth, but it's also traditional things that we want to keep up.
Yeah, so collectibles are an interesting way to do that. If you have a car collection or paintings, they can be a source of education, not only about the value of the thing itself, but also the value of the family that purchased it and the values that sort of instructed why they thought it was important. I'd go a step further and say, collectibles are one manifestation of that kind of wealth. The family business is also an interesting manifestation of that. And it's a great way to teach kids where the wealth came from, what the responsibilities are of that family business, not only in generating wealth for the family, but in dealing with customers, dealing with vendors, the relationship within the community. All of that, I think, is a large component of the education process of where the wealth came from, why it's important to the family, and the responsibility of maintaining it and growing it in the future. So to get back to your collectibles comment, to have that in physical form, there's a lot of great education and history that can be taught, not only about the actual pieces of collectible, whatever form it may take, but also the way in which the family purchased it.
Without a doubt. And I'm all about making sure that my kids and my stepchildren, whom I love dearly, know how hard I'm working for them. So the family business, Romulus Entertainment, my husband's business, all of that gets passed on in a smart way. And how many investments, when you go back to collectibles, can you say that you get personal enjoyment out of from looking at them? Like owning an antique car is certainly more enjoyable than owning a piece of paper that says you own shares in company XYZ. But yes, I think it's all part and parcel to proper planning. And what Frazer, what you're teaching and what your book, Wealth Actually, really kind of guides people towards is this way of life. It's not necessarily just about money or wealth planning. It's about understanding and communications between families. And I think anybody who wants to get on the right track with respect to estate planning, generational wealth, should definitely read your book. Got a thumbs up from me, buddy. And Kyle, thank you so much for recommending he come on the show. This guy's awesome. And of course, Kyle, you're one of our best contributors here. So I thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Zen.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You guys are listening to A Moment of Zen. I'm your host, Zen Sams, live right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We will be right back after this. That was Kyle Wool, president of wealth management at Revere Securities, and Frazer Rice, book author of Wealth Actually. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Tempest, a Burkhan World Project, Vichecina in Midtown and Soho, Revere Securities, Helen Yarmack International, and Romulus Entertainment. Tune in every Saturday night at 9 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, or download the iHeart app. Text the word collaborations to 917-575-2321. Follow Zen on social media at ZenSams. That's Zen with an X.
We're almost at the end of our date, my dear friends, but I will leave you with a little bit of food for thought. Okay. Now, as the Delta variant threatens to suspend a return to normalcy again, New York City's vaccine mandate for indoor entertainment venues, and this includes concert halls, museums, restaurant, bars, fitness gyms, movie and stage theaters, is set to launch Tuesday. Now, this program is part of the Key to NYC initiative, and it's going to require New Yorkers to show an Excelsior pass, a CDC paper card, or other official documentation, as well as personal identification. Now, the city believes if they take these aggressive measures, this is going to encourage a lot of people, a lot of audience members and staff alike to get vaccinated. Now, city officials said that children younger than age 12 who are currently in eligible to receive the vaccine must be accompanied by a vaccinated person to these indoor locations, and they will be encouraged to, of course, wear masks. Now, de Blasio emphasized that the vaccine mandate is not aimed at punishing local indoor businesses that didn't comply, but rather to increase public safety and take steps towards defeating the virus. New York City officials will begin inspecting and enforcing this mandate on September 13th. Now, this feels like a lot of our rights just got revoked. I'm all for the vaccination, but I'm not okay with this mandate, and people should be able to choose whatever happened to freedom of choice in this great country and where we live. So that's just some food for thought, okay? And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Broadway coming back because it is official. The 41 storied theaters from Midtown to Lincoln Center have been shuttered since basically March. Now, barring unforeseen problems like this Delta variant, they will reopen at full glorious capacity starting September 14th. Now, that's the day right after this vaccination passport mandate kicks in here in New York City. Now, the show's scheduling announcements are coming fast and furious. So here's a small guide to some of my favorite plays and musicals that are reopening very soon. All reopening September 14th are Chicago, Hamilton, Wicked, and The Lion King. That's right, September 14th. That's right around the corner. And ever wondered what it would take to be like if the 6 wives of Henry VIII had a pop group? Well, me either. But once you see 6, you'll be shocked that it took someone this long to come up with the glittering idea. 6 starts October 3rd. You also have Moulin Rouge on September 24th and Aladdin September 28th. Then you have the Tina Turner biomusical starring a galvanizing Adrian Warren. That's starting up again October 8th. And then we have Jagged Little Pill starting October 21st. That's right. That sounds familiar because it is. Alanis Morissette's seminal album has been turned into a musical about a complicated family. Phantom of the Opera comes back October 22nd. That's Broadway's longest running show. Andrew Lloyd Webber, The Phantom of the Opera, is going to resume making the music of the night very soon. And then we have Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on November 16th. Well, that's a wrap, my friends. Remember to join me right here on 710 WR, the voice of New York, every Saturday night from 9 to 10 p.m. or go to 710WOR.iHeart.com/A Moment of Xen to watch fully uploaded episodes. We are a vodcast, and in latent terms, that is a TV podcast. So you can see me as of Monday morning. Remember to tune back in next Saturday at 9 p.m. Thank you for listening to A Moment of Xen. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host. Thanks again to all of our sponsors, Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, Romulus Entertainment, Vichecina, Midtown and Soho, Helen Yarmack International, Revere Securities, Tempest, a Burkhan World Project, and Aikido Pharma with ticker symbol AIKI. Till next week, and remember, happiness is the only thing that multiplies when you share it.